Very interesting. Let's bring in Pierre Benazet, our correspondent in Brussels. Pierre, great to talk to you tonight. Bring us up to date. Are we hearing anything from the ambassadors' meeting? Give me a sense of what's being said, what's going on in Brussels.
Well, we don't quite know yet because this meeting has been convened, as you know, in an emergency format and also in a restricted format. That means that the 27 EU ambassadors are only accompanied by one diplomat who's in who's in charge of taking notes in the meeting. All we know is that before the ambassadors convened at 1700 local time in Brussels, the united front that the concerned countries, the countries which are aimed at by these measures from Donald Trump, they wished for, this united front is beginning little by little to constitute itself. We have even heard from Giorgia Meloni, who didn't send troops to Greenland for the Operation Arctic Endurance, saying that what Donald Trump did was, I quote, a mistake. Exactly the same line as what Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, said just this morning. We've heard indignant reactions all over the board here in Brussels, a common declaration from the 8 countries which are in the crosshairs from the threats of Donald Trump. We've also heard that this meeting is going to take as long as it takes. We have a few ideas of what they are talking about, obviously.
Right, let's talk about that, because a bit like the grace of a swan above water, often the statements from the EU, what you really want to know is what's going on underneath the waters as the legs start to paddle. In this case, you get a lot more briefings, I know from my time as Europe correspondent, from those who work for the prime ministers and work for the ambassadors off air, off camera. I'm just interested in those conversations about where this could go, where this is shaping. And one of those terms being mentioned right now is the economic coercion instrument as a kind of reprisal threat to President Trump. Is that credible? What would that entail?
Well, it is credible if they manage to find what we call here a QMV, that's the lingo, the local jargon for a qualified majority vote, which means that more than half of the 27 EU members and more than 65% of the population would have to vote in favor of this measure. The anti-coercion instrument is something that was created not long ago, actually in 23, in response to Chinese threats against Lithuania. It was never put in place, never used. Well, we know that it's called the bazooka in the arsenal, the nuclear weapon, if you will, because it can aim at multiple directions at the same time. It can prohibit US in this case, US enterprises and firms to go into the European single market, which means, for instance, tech giants from Silicon Valley couldn't provide the internet users in Europe with their services, whatever they may be. It could also impose quotas on imports and services as well. It could prohibit US societies and firms to go into public procurement markets in Europe. Quite a range of tools which are very threatening, which were discussed last year during the first offensive by Donald Trump after the first tariffs were announced, but it was never used. The Europeans at that time chose negotiation, and they also have 2 other tools, which are the tariffs that they prepared in retaliation and which were never imposed and which are now suspended, and they could go also in that direction as well.
Right, we're hearing tonight, Pierre, from Mette Frederiksen, the Danish Prime Minister, saying this, quote, "Europe will not be blackmailed by President Trump." Bear in mind as well, you talk about a number of the options. The 8 countries we're talking about, Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, France, Germany, the UK, the Netherlands as well, all of them Western Europe. We're not talking about Eastern Europe, we're not talking about Southern Europe as well. And there's a room, as some analysts suggest, for division here. Do you sense that there is a united front here? I'm particularly interested in the likes of Hungary, for example, whether they'd be in on being united on this issue of Greenland.
Probably not, because we've heard zero comment coming out of Budapest, obviously, because this is something very embarrassing for them, because they are always We know that Viktor Orban has always had quite a good relationship with Donald Trump. The same for Giorgia Meloni as well. But all these countries in Central and Eastern Europe have also another problem, and that is not only for Hungary, for the others mainly, that is they know that they need the US in order to support the plan for the peace plan in Ukraine. They need to have US funds eventually one day. They also need to have Ukraine buying weapons and weapon systems in the US. So that's something that the Europeans as a whole have a great problem with. They want to maintain this relationship. That's the sense of the first formal declaration by Antonio Costa and Ursula von der Leyen, saying that they wanted to repair this transatlantic link, if you will, which is in course of degradation, and dialogue was needed, and that's probably the direction that they are all in favor of, rather than heading out with the nuclear weapons, if you will.
Very interesting. Well, just behind you, Ursula von der Leyen, usually sitting on the 13th floor of that building at the European Commission. Today, of course, she's 10,000 miles away. They've been caught on the back foot as the Mercosur agreement in Paraguay. They'll be working out what to do as they get back. Pierre, for now, great to talk to you. Pierre Benazet, our correspondent in Brussels.